Good morning and welcome to our 30-minute extended disc webinar. Today's topic is on how to promote and sell extended disc assessments. If you missed any of it or you'd like to share it with any of your coworkers, it will be recorded and put on our website in the next few days. Unfortunately, as always, we don't have time for questions, but please put it in the questions section and we will follow up with you after the webinar has ended. So as a trainer, I talk a lot about how to deliver DISC assessments, but we oftentimes get asked the question, how can we promote, or how can our clients and affiliates promote and sell extended DISC? So I've asked Marku to join me today to discuss ways to sell and promote extended discs. So welcome, Marku.
Thank you, Christina. How are you?
I'm very good, thanks. So let's get started. So we get asked the question, how do I sell disc? Or how do I sell extended disc?
Yeah, we get that question a lot, Christina, and not only for people who have maybe they work for a training company, or maybe they're independent trainer consultant who has to go out and get some new business, and extended disc often is a nice lead in, but also from internal trainers who must take the tool to their organization and help them to become more successful and help people to really learn to modify those behaviors. And that's where extended disc is really the key factor. And so the starting point really is that people are, as you know, they're so excited when they have extended disc finally in their toolbox. They've learned about the tool, they see all the different possibilities, they know how to facilitate it, how to use the coach with the extended disc. But now they need to go and kind of get it out to the marketplace or inside their organization, or perhaps they just got certified and now they really know how to use the tool. Maybe they got virtually certified or they attended one of our training sessions here in Houston. So they're kind of now ready to go and start using it. And often what I see is they just want to get the word out. Maybe they want to list it on their website, or maybe you have a course catalog. You just want to get out there and hope that people will actually come to you and begin to ask, hey, can I use extended disc? But ultimately, its challenge is that how do I actually get people to ask if extended disc is part of the solution? Many times over the years, I have people say, hey, I want to put it on my website. I even want to put an online store. But the reality is that people are just not going to call you and say, hey, I want to use extended disc.
Yeah. So I think, with people like Marku was saying, once they have signed on with extended disc, we're all excited. But what's that next step? How do we actually sell the extended disc assessments themselves?
Yeah, and the way I think you have to look at selling and promoting assessments is I call it it's what I call an MRI business, the magnetic resonance imaging, I think it's called. MRI business, I call it that because people don't buy MRIs. They will not call a hospital or doctor's office and say, hey, I want to buy 10 MRIs because they're so cool. It just doesn't happen, because what they really, when it comes to MRIs, they buy a diagnostic tool to identify problems. For example, I had a shoulder problem about a year ago, and first thing the doctor really wanted me to do is to get an MRI. And I'm claustrophobic. I hated that process, but it was something that I thought it was important. It was something that I didn't argue with the doctor. It was something that needed to be done in order for him to diagnose the problem correctly and then obviously prescribe treatment. So it's the first part of the process. And the same thing applies to assessments. People just do not buy assessments. If people call you and say, I want to buy extended disc, waiting for that call, you're going to be waiting for that call for a long time, because it just doesn't happen. Because what people are really buying, they're buying solutions to their problems. And I think it's important that you keep this big picture in mind, that you focus on their clients, your prospects' problems, and do not try to sell an assessment. You don't try to sell extended disc.
Okay. I think that's a great analogy for MRIs. I'm claustrophobic too, so I totally get it, but we know we need it. So can you describe these problems that you're talking about?
Well, unfortunately, the problems are, there's a lot of problems when it comes to organization with the employees. It could be as simple as communication breakdowns. We see that, of course, happen in almost every organization. Those breakdowns could be between two employees, perhaps a manager and their direct report. Maybe it's between divisions or departments, or even having a difficulty for the top management to get their message throughout the organization so they understand the vision of where the company is going to be going. A lot of conflicts. Whenever you put people in the same room, eventually conflicts will arise. And a lot of times these conflicts are not based on that we dislike somebody. We just don't understand the other person. They are different in their style, the way they communicate, what they focus on, and that creates friction. And of course, extended disc model here works so well because it allows us to provide unbiased information that makes no judgments about better or worse. It just helps us understand how people are different and how we can modify our own behavior to become more successful with others. Leadership challenges. Leadership training has been a huge part of organizational development efforts in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years now. And when people realize that in order for us to be successful, we must have the right leaders, and those leaders need to know how to lead others.
Yeah, it's not just existing leaders, but how do you develop potential?
Absolutely. We have new generations coming through the organization. How we make sure we have leaders in the future, how we identify the high potentials, how we develop them to become even more successful. And now, of course, sales. I never met a person who is a salesperson, owner of business, saying that, hey, we are selling way too much.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to sell more. But the challenge is that how do we take our sales professionals and make sure that they really understand how to modify their sales behaviors to become more successful. Too many of them on autopilot, they repeat the same kind of calls over and over. And of course, many of those end up not being so successful. Teamwork. Well, most organizations have teams that work with on different project teams, and we all work with one another. And those behavioral differences create challenges. We all have been part of a team that really was not the greatest team, and we didn't even look forward to team meetings and much less working together with one another. So teamwork is, of course, another issue that a lot of organizations challenge. And on more of a larger scale, I think big problem for many organizations is that they really don't have good information about their employees. So basically, it's like they are flying an airplane in the dark without any instrumentation. They have to make very important decisions about their employees, sometimes with no solid information. And at least most organizations I talk to, they always say that employees are their most important asset. However, they don't have any good information about their employees, so they have to make those decisions in the dark. Other problems, the famous saying goes, employees quit their managers. They don't quit their organization. And this, I think there was a recent study about this that you don't know.
Yeah, we just actually posted it on our social media about how employees quit their managers and how managers impact the satisfaction of their employees and whether or not they leave. And we posted it on social media.
Very good. And then if you think about this, maybe you have been in a situation, hopefully not now, where you work for a manager that it's just difficult. You don't like your manager. Typically that goes to behavioral differences. It is very challenging to go to work every morning, and eventually you begin to look for new opportunities and can't wait to resign and have a better working environment.
Good thing I like my manager.
I'll have to say that this morning. Now, to be fair to managers, they have a lot of problems that their employees create, and most managers lose some sleep over these issues. And there are so many of them. They have some employees that are so productive, they get things done, they're ideal employees, but others just are not even close to that. And they can't figure out that, hey, I'm treating this person the same way, even spending more time with this employee that doesn't perform well, but I can't get them to kind of up their game. Maybe they're having employee turnover issues, maybe due to their own behaviors, but also a lot of times employees just leave because managers do not know how to effectively modify their behavior, how to communicate, how to motivate, how to coach these employees. And they end up being very frustrated that they can't really get their vision across, and they can't get these people on the same page, so to speak. And that creates just huge differences in productivity. So Christina, all of this that we talked about, these problems, really what it comes down to is that when you have people, when you have employees, you will have some people problems that need to be solved.
So that's a lot of problems, Markku.
And that's not the complete list.
I know. So, but we need, one thing is obviously to understand the problem, but what would be a next step?
Well, the next step is really, if you go back to the MRI analogy, extended disc is that diagnostic tool that helps us to understand what are the root causes of the problem. So we're not dealing with the symptoms. Because when we are dealing with people, the extended disc assessment is almost always the first step because it helps us understand what we are dealing with. And then with that information, we are able to create that roadmap to success. Now, here the important part is that when you are talking with a prospect or you're talking with maybe a manager within your organization where you think extended disc could be the solution, the key point here to remember is that you don't go and talk about extended disc. You go and ask questions because you must understand what the problems are. Like when I had my MRI done, I didn't even pay attention was that MRI machine was General Electric or Siemens. I didn't care. Only thing I cared about is that I wanted the shoulder pain to go away. And because I trusted my doctor, I trusted that he was able to diagnose it properly using the right tools. And that's all I needed to know.
That's a great analogy, Marco. I think with a lot of our clients as well as our affiliates clients, in this day and age, they already have used or have some type of knowledge of behavioral assessments.
That is very true.
So how would you address that fact?
Well, I think what I see is that a lot of times when people hear that their prospect or maybe some department is already using some type of assessment tool, they get a little bit nervous. They're like, they already have a solution that they're using, so there's no opportunities for me here. But really, actually, that is good news that they're using something because that means that they believe that these kind of tools can be part of the solution. The reality is that apathy is your greatest competitor. I've seen situations where manager or business owner, they know they have all these people problems, but they essentially given up. They just, it's part of what I have to deal with, and I'm not going to tackle those problems. So if they are using something, that means that they understand that there's value to these tools. Now, if you are at that stage, now you just start asking questions about finding out how they are being used. Are they used in just one training session or is it something else? And more importantly, what have these assessments really done to improve the productivity, the success of your employees, your teams, and your organization? And you want to understand if, for example, it has become a part of the culture. Is it something that people are really using, or was it something that was part of a training program, perhaps, where people just had a fun time learning about themselves? Because too often that happens. People get their assessment, they have fun with it, they are eager to share what they learn at home and with their colleagues, but it really doesn't change anything. The big picture with using extended disc, I believe, is it must be always focused on how do we solve these problems and how do we get employees to modify their behavior. That is always the end goal. And then one thing you want to find out, how is it being reinforced? A lot of times it's not being reinforced. And if you're not reinforcing the use of these tools, if the managers are not using in their daily behaviors, asking the employees that question, what style was that prospect, or what style is that client? It does not become part of your organization. It must become part of your organization. Then it begins to solve all these problems we just talked about.
I really like this list of questions. So one of the things I'm hearing is to make sure you not only identify a problem, but you ask questions.
You ask a lot of questions. And the one thing about if they're using another assessment, you do not want to attack that assessment. No, I don't care what they use. If they're using a crystal ball as their assessment tool, you don't want to attack that because that person may well have been the one who brought it into the organization, or there's somebody that really believe in that tool. You don't want to attack them. You want to focus on finding out whatever the tool is, how effectively it's helping them. And typically you will find that they may be somewhat happy, but they really would like it to do more.
Yeah, and another thing that we get asked, or our clients tell us, is not only are they using other behavioral assessments, but they are specifically using other DISC assessments.
We hear that a lot, and that of course, like if you look at our organization, over 95% of our clients use some form of DISC in the past. And what I see here is when one of our clients, let's say it's a trainer who goes to meet up with a client, and the client says that, hey, I'm actually using DISC. Sometimes they get really nervous because now I feel like I'm in some kind of direct competitive situation. But the reality, if they are using DISC, that is actually the best news. Those are the best kind of prospects for you, because what it means is that if they already like DISC, there's a very good chance that they will really like extended DISC. And what also it's really helpful to you that it is so easy for them to switch to extended DISC because what they know about the DISC model, the D style, I style, S and C style, they don't have to learn new language. They don't have to learn new model. Now they're simply able to do so much more, and it's going to be an easy transition from disk to extended disk.
I see that. So understanding the problem, identifying it by asking those questions, what would you say are the next steps, Markku?
Yeah, once you understand the problems, it's very important that you be the product of the product. And what I mean by that is that you need to modify your style, because if your prospect finds that you are not really using what you are trying to promote or sell, you don't really have any credibility. Like when I went to that doctor, I asked for recommendations before, and I wanted to make sure that this doctor knew what he was doing. And when I met him, I felt comfortable with him. If you go to a doctor, you are not very comfortable, you think that this person probably is not very professional, you have some problems. You need to trust the person. So as you go and talk about extended disk, you must be the use what you are trying to promote.
Practice what you preach.
Exactly. So you need to modify your style. And what that means is you look using that 4-step process that we talked about so often. You make sure that you are very comfortable with the different disc styles. You have that confident self-awareness, and you really pay attention to that person you're having that conversation with when you're talking about those people problems, that you identify their style so you can modify your behavior, how you communicate, how you listen, how you interact with this person. Then you are credible. And now it's good to keep in mind that in many ways they are really buying you initially. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that credibility, if you don't practice what you're trying to promote, you are not going to get very far.
And what's great is with the extended disc behind you, it's so powerful because many tools, or what our tool does well, is it goes beyond that self-awareness piece, which is critical, but really the success comes into play is when you're able to modify your behaviors.
Yeah, having that confident self-awareness is not the end. It's really the start. Ultimately, again, what we're always trying to do is we help our clients, the employees, to really understand how they should make what kind of decisions they need to make to modify their behavior. And they're very conscious decisions about what do I need to do in this interaction to have a more productive communication, more productive interaction. That's what you're always trying to achieve. Having self-awareness is fine. That's a good thing to have. I believe all successful people I've met are very self-aware. Mm-hmm. They make peace with the fact that they have some development areas and they understand their strengths. They make sure they don't overuse them. But if you don't modify your behaviors, you're really not getting the value that extended disk can provide. One other thing is that you want to make sure that when you are talking about promoting, selling extended disk, that you don't stop using your sales system, whatever that may be. Sometimes I see, even with people who are in sales training, when they think about selling extended disk, they sort of forget about their own model. You need to make sure that you are still using your professional sales skills. Selling extended disk is really no different than selling something else. You need to understand what that process is. So make sure you use your sales system. And other thing that I think is really important to remember, and sometimes I see our clients forget this. They get very excited about all of these different things that extended disk can do, but you want to make sure that you keep it simple and make it easy for the client to buy. So a lot of times less is often more. You don't need to talk about all these things that we can do. You just focus on what that client wants to solve, that problem they want to solve, and you focus on that and make sure that you don't provide too much information because that can overwhelm them. And of course, it's good to talk about the 4-step process with their client, with your prospect, because when they understand that they can use the 4-step process in different kinds of applications, whether it's helping my employees communicate more effectively, to be more successful sales professionals or better leaders, they can always use this 4-step approach, whatever the application is. And that what happens, I see, is that it makes it easier for the prospect to implement the model. They realize it's not going to take as much effort and time. It's actually an easy solution.
So you don't want to tell your clients necessarily that we have over 220 million unique reports.
Yeah, it's very exciting to get about all these features that we have, because they are wonderful and they are important for some clients. But having 220 million plus reports may not be important to the person. What's important that I have this problem that need to be solved, and we need to continue to focus on that and think about how the different features that we have can connect and provide the solution to that problem.
So what I'm hearing is start with one application.
That is correct, because what may happen is that when you're having that conversation and all these different problems comes on the surface and you think about how you could solve those problems, it's easy to be tempted to present too many solutions at one time. I think it's more effective to start with one problem and using one extended solution to that problem and make sure you handle and solve that problem well. Because once you begin to talk about all these different solutions, a lot of times it becomes overwhelming for the prospect. And when the prospect becomes overwhelmed, they typically hesitate to take action, or maybe they think this is just too much and they decide not to do anything. But you focus on that most important problem first, you prioritize those issues and make sure your client, your prospect agrees with that. You start with that first. And then once you start solving that problem, you begin to expand to other opportunities, attacking those other problems.
So what I hear is that, once you're able to help your client move forward successfully, it almost will help to expand the next steps.
Yeah, and a lot of times when the client begins to see how the solution for the first problem we're attacking is going so well, they begin to think about other issues and other problems and say, I know we are working with our sales team right now, but you know what? At the customer service team, we have some of the similar kind of problems, not identical, but they are still people problems. Maybe we could look at extended disk in that area. Now, it doesn't always happen. You need to be very in tune with what the problems the client has and make sure that you are able to identify those problems and then think about what extended disk solutions can help to solve them. Because what sometimes happens is that the client kind of gets stuck in that one stage. You want to make sure that you continue to look for those other opportunities. And one thing you need to always do is, I call it, make your client look good. And what I mean by that, Christina, is that when somebody brings extended disk in their organization, let's say it's a facilitator, internal facilitator, they want to use extended disk with their organization employees. It is critical that that first session goes well. We need to provide them the support. We want to make sure that they're very comfortable and confident using that tool, because if they don't feel that way, and more importantly, if they don't have a successful first session, they're less likely to use it. If the first session goes well, and that's what, Christina, that's what you do. You support our facilitators. You know firsthand that when they have that first session that goes well, they want to do it again because it makes them feel good. They can see that their effort and the tool that they're using are making a clear impact for their organization. They want to do it again. And of course, even after that, you want to make sure you follow up with your client, you provide them the support. Maybe you need to educate them a little bit. Maybe kind of think about what are the other applications, other ways I could solve some of these people problems in our organization.
So, once they have achieved that initial success, can you talk a little bit more about the expanding the options that are available?
Yeah, what may happen is that the initial solution, initial application of extended disk, sometimes your client may think about, okay, extended disk solves that problem only. But as you know, we have hundreds of different kinds of assessments, whether we focus on more individual situations, leadership situations, the list goes on and on. There's really not an employee situation that requires behavioral modification that we don't have some tool to help with that. So we need to make sure that we continue to listen, ask questions, obviously, and continue to listen and find out what are some of the other problems, that other challenges that the client is dealing with. And then you are continually making connections with what part of extended disk solution can be effective. And by the way, at this stage, it's a lot easier because now the client already is a believer. You just need to make sure that you help them understand what those different solutions are. And of course, what it makes so easy with this, that the employees, they only have to complete that questionnaire one time. And once they complete that questionnaire one time, you have all these different reports that we talked about in other webinars, and here listed just a few. They don't have to spend their valuable time completing the questionnaire over and over. Once you have that data in there, you can reprocess it in unlimited different ways. You can create those pair reports, or you can create team reports, or you can look at the entire organization. And of course, what clients really will like is that they only have to pay once for that initial assessment.
Yeah, and so I think as people who do the marketing and selling of extended disk, it's important for you to understand that there's a lot of range and flexibility to the extended disc tools and solutions that are offered.
Yeah, even with our clients who are using extended disc with their clients, sometimes they kind of getting stuck in using it one way only.
Exactly.
And they fail to see some other opportunities that extended disc could be part of the solution. And again, once you have a successful first application, you're attacking that first problem first, then your chances of kind of deepening that relationship are much, much easier because you have that personal connection. They know that you are credible. They know that you can solve problems. And now you're just looking for different applications with the same tool.
Well, thank you, Markku. In the interest of time, I know that is a great starting point. I myself have gotten a lot of aha moments, so I appreciate you joining us today. But just kind of to help summarize for the people in attendance, what are some of the main points that you would want them to take away from this webinar?
Well, the main point really is that in order to promote those cell extended disc, you really need to make sure that you help that decision maker, your client, your prospect to really clearly understand what their people problems really are. They need to you need to at the same time make the connections with extended disc solutions that are appropriate to those problems. So basically what you have to do is don't talk about extended disc right away. Don't get too excited about all the wonderful features. They are fantastic, but you don't want to talk about that. The client doesn't really care at this stage. But you need to ask a lot of questions. You need to listen. And really what you're trying to do is you help your prospect to really understand what those problems are and what the impact of those problems are. And you need to make sure they feel it at a very personal level. So that makes them interested in actually wanting to solve those problems. And then you just need to connect the different, this wide range of solutions we have with extended disc, the right solutions to those problems. And keep it simple initially. Don't overwhelm. I see that so often when you begin to talk about all these wonderful things, as I said. Just keep it simple, start with the one problem, and then expand.
Well, thank you so much, Markku. Hopefully you guys got some starter points and some tips to get your own selling and promoting of extended disc assessments. As Markku says, our customer service is number one. We're here to support you. I want to talk about, before we sign off, just the next webinar we have coming up. It's one of many, so I suggest that you go to our extended disc website events page. We do have one coming up on onboarding using extended disc assessments, and that's Wednesday, February 21st at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. But just to give you kind of a lead in on some of the other ones, we'll be talking about the 4 steps that we addressed today. We'll be talking about team development. There's also ones we have planned for stress management and time management. So we encourage you to check out the upcoming webinars on our events page. There's additional webinars and other information on our homepage as well. You can see it listed here. And I highly encourage you guys to do that. So thank you, Markku, for joining me today.
You're welcome, Christina. Thank you.
And you, everyone else out there, have a great day.